Good evening, everybody. I am Councillor Dennis Spooner, the Chairman of the Planning Committee, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this adjourned meeting of the committee. May I take this opportunity to advise you that if the fire alarm does sound, please remain seated, and members of the Democratic Services team will assess the situation and give further instructions on the evacuation of the building if necessary. Tonight's proceedings will be webcast by the Council, but if anyone else is intending to record these proceedings, can you please let me know? I ask this question not to stop you, but merely to ensure that members and members of the public in the room know that this is taking place. Is anybody intending to record? Right, thank you. That is noted. I would also like to advise members that they should only address the meeting by way of their microphones and to remind them to turn their microphones off when they have finished speaking. It's also advantageous if you speak as closely to your mic as possible so your voice can be recorded on the webcast. The item numbers and page numbers which I will reference in the agenda relate to the papers for the adjourned meeting, not for the meeting we had last week. Item number 1 on the agenda. I have received apologies from Councillors Jeffrey and Russell. Are there any other apologies? No, thank you. Substitute members, I've been notified of Councillor Cooper.
I'm Councillor Cooper, subbing for Councillor Mrs. Russell.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. And Councillor Eagle?
Yeah, Councillor Eagle subbing for Councillor Jeffrey.
Welcome to our committee, Councillor Eagle. I think this is the first one you've attended. I hope you enjoy it. And perhaps want to come back again even. Right, item number 3, visiting members. I cannot see any in the public gallery. Item number 4, items withdrawn from the agenda. I'll ask Mr. Jarman to explain. There is an application which has been withdrawn.
Yes. Oops. Sorry. Yes. There's a number of issues we need to reconsider with regard to this application, and they're quite fundamental to the determination of the application. So we need to do a bit more research and then we'll report back to you.
Is that agreed, members? Thank you. Item number 5 on the agenda, urgent updates. We have had a couple of urgent updates on a couple of the applications. I intend to take these this evening as they contain further information relating to the application to be considered this evening. Item number 6, are there any disclosures by members and officers? Thank you. Item number 7, are there any disclosures of lobbying? Councillor Cooper?
I've been lobbied on item number 9 of tonight's agenda.
And Councillor Reardon?
I've been lobbied on item number 11 on tonight's agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reardon. Both of those are duly noted. Item number 8. Oh, sorry, I didn't see it. Councillor Kimmons.
Thank you, Chair. I have been lobbied on the item 11, which has been withdrawn. Also, item 9, 10 and 12. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kimmons. Councillor English.
I've been lobbied on items 9 and 12.
Thank you, Councillor English. Councillor Gooch. Thank you, Councillor Gooch. Councillor Cox. Thank you, Councillor Cox. I'm sorry, with Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Chairman. Items 9 and 11.
Thank you, Councillor Harwood. Item number 8 on the agenda. I move that the items on the agenda be taken in public as proposed. Is that agreed? Thank you, members. Right, we now move on to, which I think is item 10 on the agenda, which is the first one on the running order, which is the coach yard, Old Ashford Road, Lenham. And I'll call upon Mr. Amaker to produce his report. The floor is yours, Mr. Amaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. This is a retrospective application to change the use of a small section of a former coach yard for the stationing of a mobile burger van and a canopy for preparation and retailing of hot food. The application site is in the open countryside, east of the built confines and settlement of Lenham. The photographs you see on the screens now shows the location of the application site. You can see those blue canopies within the site, which is the existing use of the site as tie bay and a washing bay. The burger van is positioned between the customer outdoor waiting area and a car parking space in the northeastern part of the site. This burger van is not connected to the existing lawful use of the site as a car wash and tie bay. The photo on the screen shows the burger van. Obviously, it's a very small structure, and the canopy is not showing, but I would move on to the plans now, where you can see the size of the canopy itself. So the location again is on this proposed block plan, which is in the corner of the site, as you can see. Officers are of the view that due to the small scale of the burger van and canopy, the proposal would not result in overdevelopment of the site or harm the character of the area. The burger van and canopy are viewed within the context and against the existing backdrop of a commercial site. Lenham Parish Council and a number of local residents raised concerns the proposal would increase noise and disturbance and antisocial behavior as well. So the photo on the screen now shows the scale of the burger van and the attached canopy, which is also a very small structure. The closest neighboring properties to the proposal site are approximately 30 meters away to the west and south of the application site. The small scale of nature of the application and the enclosure of the site and the fact that it would not attract significant numbers of customers would reduce any potential noise and noise nuisance. Operating within the recommended conditions would ensure that the proposal is not harmful to the living conditions of occupiers of these houses. The officers consider that the material considerations outlined in the report justify a departure from the local plan. On this basis, we recommend that the proposal is approved subject to the recommended conditions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Amaker. I have Councillor Kimmins who wishes to speak first.
Thank you, Chair. A well-written report. Thank you very much. I look at the application and it's been called in by Lenham Parish Council. Maybe they didn't really object to it, just wanted to call it in, but I have no issues with this, so I'll propose that we approve as per the papers. Thank you, Councillor Kimmins. Councillor English.
Yes, I very carefully looked at the site the other day, and I have to say that the landscape impact of this development is minimal. the traffic impact of this development appears to be minimal. I can't see why it would attract a high level of antisocial behaviour. It doesn't seem likely, unless it's going to be open at 3 in the morning or something. And even then, I can't see it. So none of the objections that have been made seem to be likely. And it seems to me that in traffic terms, it's going to be catering quite literally, mostly for the people who are already likely to visit the site. So I really don't see that it's almost such a low level of impact as to be, shrug your shoulders and say, why are we even discussing it? Because frankly, the effect is so minimal. I can't see any damage. It's just going to make someone hopefully a bit of a living, which isn't a bad thing.
Thank you, Councillor English. Does anybody else wish to? Oh, Councillor Harwood and then Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Chairman. I was just really after some satisfaction that the reference at 4E in relation to the waste and refuse, that's addressed appropriately, because when I'm out my litter picks, what I often find is tins of oil, which have been used obviously in mobile type wagons and dumped in the nearest ditch or hedge. And there's certainly a lot of them around in Boxley today. So one, I wondered, does this relate to their, if you like, trade waste, or does it relate to litter arisings from their customers? And I did wonder whether we needed to stipulate somehow, for avoidance of doubt, that they need to provide a bin or other receptacle to actually capture the cups and polystyrene and other rubbish which will accompany this development. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harwood. So what you're separating out there is litter waste compared to business waste from what they generate. Yeah.
If Councillor Harwood wants to make that a condition, an amendment, I'm quite happy to second it.
Yeah, what I would like to do, because I think we do need kind of expert input to this, is give delegated powers to the officers to just delineate that part of condition 4 to ensure that it covers both waste streams. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harwood. Are you happy with that, Mr. Amico? Yes, thank you very much. Councillor Cox?
Not needed now. I believe it's been seconded as well. I did second earlier, but that's fine.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wish to speak on this? Okay, it has been proposed that it's approved as per the order papers with the condition to be amended relating to condition 4E. Can I take votes in favour? Thank you very much, members. Any abstentions? Refusals? Thank you. That's carried. Thank you very much. Right, we now move on to item 22 or 12, depending on which papers you're looking at. The Balfour Winery, 5 Oak Lane, Staplehurst, Kent. And I'll call upon Marion Cleary to provide us with a report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Somebody able to hear me clearly? Just go through the slides. This is the site at Balfour Winery in Staplehurst. Visually, of course, Hush Heath Winery. It's effectively an active vineyard where they produce the wine, but they've also expanded into wine tours, tastings, evening events and the like, with various premises licenses granted since it's been erected. This is an indication of existing floodlights on one of the barns at the premises. Along the bit there. This is the route between the winery and the car park, indicating it's existingly lit by some bollards. Again, bollards to the car park existing. This is the front of the building that faces 5 Oak Lane, which has also got some floodlights on it. And the proposal is to amend the bollard lighting to specific unidirectional lighting as such. This is a plan showing where the lighting will go. These red dots are the bollards. The blue dots are downlights. And these indications here are the intended floodlight changes. Just to zoom in on that same scheme. And this is an indication of the various types of light by zone, which will be referenced in the planning condition that's in the urgent update. This is just an indication of the proximity of some local wildlife sites to the premises. Effectively, the nearest local wildlife site is this side of the road, so shielded from the lighting by existing buildings at the premises. So just going back to the scheme. As an urgent update report was circulated last week, and it refers to the zoning plan that's referred to in conditions. So just slight amendment to recommended conditions to reference that plan. A further update is that KCC Ecology have withdrawn their objection to the scheme on ecology grounds. They're satisfied that the design of the lighting keeps light spillage outside the site to a minimum and doesn't impact on any of the woodland or pond or any other area of ecological value in the vicinity. Just to clarify, the existing lighting at the site was approved retrospectively in 2019. And what the applicant is saying is that since then, the way they operate the business is slightly varied. They have some revised their premises licenses, and they need to adjust the lighting to accommodate that new business model. So the health and safety reasons, so their customers and their staff can access the car park safely, either after work or after the events have ceased. The existing lighting comprises of 24 14-watt bollards, and that's going to reduce to 8-watt bollards, but there'll be 26 of them. The floodlights are currently 6 in number, and they're 50-watt floodlights. These will reduce to 20-watt floodlights. And in addition, what's been negotiated, the existing floodlights onto 5 Oak Lane will be removed because they're not necessary anymore. So there'll be a benefit in terms of less lighting along the lane and the lighting that's closest to the local wildlife sites adjacent. In addition, there's an alteration to the car parking, just to sort of tarmac it, so that's also made more safe for pedestrians to use. And that will be drained to an existing soakaway crate within the site. So there's no concerns in terms of water runoff from the change from the surface of the car park. Effectively, although the lighting numbers increase, they're more bespoke designed, the wattages are lower, and we have now no longer have an objection from KC Ecology. In terms of residential amenity, let's go back to the site layout. Existing building there screens lighting in this direction. Obviously, the winery itself screens lighting from the decking, and this is a new building erected in the last year or so, which further creates a barrier to any light pollution that might reach the nearest residential properties here. The main issue which has concerned objectors is the hours of use, and what's been suggested by the applicant and accepted by officers is that there be a practice whereby the staff turn off the light manually when there's no longer need for it and health and safety reasons. But should they forget to do so, the system has a fail-safe cut-off times. 9 o'clock in the main, later at 11:30, should that be a sort of late night harvesting staff on site or an event where the public need to be able to access the car park safely after dark following one of the events. There are no concerns in terms of the surfacing the car park. We've satisfied that the drainage can be accommodated on the site. Overall recommendation is for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Marion. We have three public speakers, the first of whom, Ms. Tipples, I think should be with us virtually. Is she on the line? Can you hear us, Ms. Tipples? I think. Okay, well, we'll move on. Okay. Okay, as Ms. Tipples doesn't seem to be here, she has submitted a statement which Mrs. Snoop will read to us.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a statement from Amanda Tipples. My property adjoins the Hush Heath estate, upon which the Balfour Winery is located. This is a landscape which is intrinsically dark. I am concerned about the adverse impact that external lighting at night may have on the ecology, local environment and abundant wildlife in this area. I remain concerned that the planning officer has recommended approval without any form of ecological assessment. Nevertheless, the conditions proposed by the planning officer represent a considerable improvement on the proposals advanced by the applicant. And provided any approval of this application is subject to all those conditions, I do not wish to say anything further. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Our second speaker is Councillor Ash from Staplehurst Parish Council. I'm sure you've been here before and you know how you press the button. Thank you.
Good evening. We're mindful of the need to support local businesses and balance that against the ecological impact and residents' concerns. Regarding the biodiversity questions, we and the local residents are concerned and wish to ensure every attempt is made to mitigate any impact on the wildlife. There was the recent update from KCC Ecology about the reduced amount of lighting. Aside from that, Kent Wildlife Trust have raised concerns on the impact on Whitehurst Wood local wildlife. They mentioned the protection afforded to turtle doves, which have a feed strip located close to the site. They're one of the UK's fastest declining bird species, and the area is known for providing habitat to other priority and protected species, including birds and bats. The conclusion states the replacement lighting should be a low wattage and warm spectrum colour temperatures to minimise impact on wildlife, which is good. However, shouldn't a full ecological assessment be carried out to ensure that all the mitigation is covered? In terms of the light spill from the car park and walkway, would further tree and hedging planting be beneficial to help the light spill and to preserve the dark landscape when seen from the south? On one of the pictures, you can see there is what's clearly been a very recently planted small hedge, and there are some silver birch trees. But in terms of the light spill, could we use other species, beech, hornbeam, etc., to get a better hedging and more tree cover, just to protect the whole south and west side, as you can see on that plan? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ash. We now have Miss Eaton for the applicants. If you haven't been here before, you just need to sit down, keep calm, and you press the middle button and your microphone will light up red, and you have 3 minutes, and I'm afraid I'll stop you after 3 minutes to be fair to everybody else.
Good evening. So I'm representative of Balfour Winery. I'm Sarah Easton. Really, I wanted to sort of put across the reasoning for this proposed lighting scheme. The proposed lighting scheme has been very carefully considered to encompass all local wildlife and the residents' concerns, which we completely understand and validate. From our perspective, it is very much health and safety. We have had a number of incidences now where staff and visitors have fallen, hurt themselves because of the darkness after hours, particularly when we've had events on and staff have had to work late. We are in harvest at the moment and staff find it very difficult, and it's actually very dangerous once they leave at sort of midnight. It is an accident waiting to happen, and we really must make sure that we are looking after both the staff and our visitors. And as I said, we have carefully considered all of the lighting in respect of the environment, and we do feel this is a fair a fair proposal and are happy to accept the conditions which have been outlined in the information pack. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Right, we have 2 local ward members. I hope they've agreed between themselves who's going to speak first. Or perhaps they haven't.
Thank you, Chairman, members. First of all, I just want to say I am a parish councillor as well, and I've taken absolutely no part in any of this. I didn't even know it was going on, actually. So I will comment and I will vote on this. Let me just say straight away, I'd like to thank the officer, Marion, for your report. It's very concise and straight to the point, and it covers the issues extraordinarily well, I think. And I did read all the comments on the website, and I understand where the objectives are coming from clearly, but I think they've all been answered, quite frankly, very clearly and very concisely. There is a health and safety issue. I know the site very, very well, and staff do work late, particularly at harvesting time, but there are other times as well. I mean, for instance, frost is a big enemy of vineyards, particularly, and they have a very elaborate system at Hush Heath to combat that, and staff can find themselves out in the early hours of the morning, in the middle of the night, taking preventative measures. So I know these are very serious issues. The current car park is rough, there's no doubt about that, and I think tarmacking it over and just improving it, is all they're proposing, is a very relevant thing to do. The lighting, the current lighting they have has made every effort with the current lighting to make sure that it doesn't affect residents, that it is not bright, and it has a downward projection. I think the lighting that's very clearly stated in the report is very, very clear that it's actually an improvement, I think. And of course, some flood lighting will be got rid of anyway. So I think overall, I think it's a benefit actually to residents, and certainly a necessary feature for the staff and people working there late. So overall, I think it's an excellent report and very clearly said. And I'd personally be very happy to move it for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Does the other local member wish to say, Councillor Reardon? Then I'll come to Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to also thank the officers for their thorough report. I think the lighting scheme has been very sensitively designed. Members will see that it's significantly reduced the energy usage on the whole site. It's also the existing lighting was quite sensitive, and this is actually an improvement on the matter. As Councillor Perry said, farms and wineries are naturally in the country, so we do have people working there, so we have to consider their health and safety, which I think this manages very well. The car park is just being resurfaced, which I think it will be an improvement also. So generally, as our officers have said, the ecological is not an issue, the drainage is not an issue, and I think the applicant has addressed any concerns. So I'm very happy to support Councillor Perry's proposal, and I'm happy to second it, but I'm welcome to other.
Thank you, Councillor Reardon. Before I come to vote, there are other councillors wishing to speak, and I have Councillor Harwood, Cox and English and Gooch. Okay, so Harwood, you're first in the queue.
Thank you, Chairman. It's probably worth bringing the aerial photograph we could of the site. Thank you. I think that shows up that this is a very intensively cropped site. It may not know this as a committee, but vineyards do not attract countryside stewardship funding nor elms funding, like all fruit farms. And because of that, they tend to be very, very intensively farmed. You don't get any trees or hedges or anything else that gets in the way of the very lucrative crop. So that kind of sets some alarm bells ringing, because I've got, you know, some big issues on my side, northern side of the town, with the march of vineyards in the Kent Downs. And I think the big thing that was missing from this report was any attempt to seek a biodiversity net gain. And the reason I say that is that this application is clearly an intensification in terms of the area of development with the additional tarmac, and in terms of the light heads. I am content that the impact on the Kent Wildlife site, on the woodland on the other side of the road, is pretty much addressed. But I still do have some concerns around the pond in the southeast corner of the site. And I think Staplehurst Parish Council really put their finger on it. In the way to tackle this is that we are seeing a move from low bollard lighting, from some of the flood lighting on the buildings, but it still will have an impact on the aquatic habitats, because aquatic habitats are some of the most vulnerable to impact from lighting, because all of the kind of life cycles and rhythms are based on moonlight. So therefore it throws everything out of kilter. And I think, as the parish council state, the way to overcome this is just to put in a wedge of landscaping on that southeast corner to almost wrap around the large pond, where currently it shows bollard lighting down the side of the developed area. There's a kind of right angle of open land that's currently closely mown between the pond and the walkway. If we put a landscaping condition, which is currently not attached to the papers, to put in native shrub planting in the area, point to it. I think that will overcome the impact. So the low bollards bring the lighting down, and then the shrub planting screens it in a kind of lateral way. And I think in that way, we will be able to identify net gain for biodiversity, and everybody is happy, especially the things living in the pond.
Thank you, Councillor Holbert. So you're looking for a beefed up landscaping?
Well, there currently isn't a landscaping scheme, so it's a new landscaping condition, and it's native shrub planting between the building essentially and the lighting and the large ponds, and I think that will do it.
And you think that will be adequate to quota for a biodiversity net gain?
I think it would.
Okay, that's fine. Can I ask Mrs. Cleary to come back to you before I come on to Councillor English? Can I raise? Oh, Councillor Hull. Sorry, Mr. Jarman.
I get straight to the point. As you probably remember from the Aldi application, our policy on net biodiversity gain only applies to residential. The council chose, that obviously had an option of covering all types of development, but it chose and has maintained that position through the main modifications for it just applied to residential. There is general encouragement in the NPPF, and there has been for at least 4 years, for biodiversity improvement. I think the term biodiversity net gain isn't in the NPPF, but councillors need to be aware of the policy background or lack of it.
Thank you, Mr. Jarman. So Councillor Cox and then Councillor English.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry. Councillor Cox and then Councillor English. Sorry.
David, long.
Sorry. Sorry.
Thank you, and thank you, Clive. Agree with everything, obviously, Clive, Tony has said. I'm surprised he hasn't asked as well for south of the car park, because the longer view across from the south looking north may be a chance to again soften the edge of the car park where the most of the floodlights are I know they're pointing down, and what I was going to say, but it's been said, is that overall they have the wattages and the angles have been lowered. So I think overall it will be better than it probably was. But if we're doing the piece of landscaping around the pond, I just wonder whether it wouldn't be similar to put something along the south edge of the car park, just for, as well for more security, or is that it's already there, is it? Who's moving that in? So it's already there.
Good timing. Yeah, there's some whips gone in. Obviously,
They will.
once they establish, they should shoot up and create a hedgerow to the end of the car park. I think that was put in relation to previous complaints about lighting at the site.
Yeah.
So they've foreseen that
Lovely.
issue.
Excellent. My last and only point then is where we had Marden Sports Complex last week, and we had a very elaborate drawing of where the floodlighting spilled over. We have none of that here. So we just got points, no elaborate drawing of what it was to what it is going to be. So that would have helped, but that's just a memo to people watching and going, well, why is this taking so long? If we'd have had that, we would probably have seen it. But for me, all the wattages are lower and the angles are lower, so I fully intend to agree with what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor English.
The lighting is an improvement in my view over the existing position. I still not a great fan of tarmac, and I would have preferred a somewhat less permeable surface, but impermeable surface, I mean. I would say that in terms of the landscaping condition and biodiversity gain, although we didn't necessarily refer to it as that, I recall a rather large fruit packing plant, which is definitely not a residential planning application in Linton, where we had some quite substantial landscaping and biodiversity conditions, and that was a few years ago. So we may well call it something different and quite rightly say that this is a landscape and lighting mitigation, but I don't think the condition that Councillor Harwood is asking for is at all unreasonable, although we might want to perhaps adjust the phraseology and emphasise the landscaping lighting mitigation issues just as much as the biodiversity ones.
Thank you, Councillor English. Councillor Gooch, I don't know whether you had your hand up or you did. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I certainly thank Councillor Harwood for detailing his comments about the landscaping. I found this very, very harsh, very, very hard. I understand all about the lighting and it's been negated and cancelled out. I'm happy with that. I don't have a problem, but it's very harsh, and I would fully support any opportunity for landscaping. There isn't anything, and I'm surprised that there isn't any kind of condition that's got landscaping in it. So I would urge that. I was fascinated to hear Mr. Jarman's advice about biodiversity net gain only applying to residential. Fair point. I will bear that in mind. However, it does not preclude us from asking for it here, because in my view, it's perfectly reasonable so to do. And we're not looking for huge, great willows or huge, great broadleaf trees. There's some lovely shrub planting that's around, and I don't mean awful Leylandii. I mean very attractive shrubs, and they would make it attractive for customers as well, for clients. So it could only be good all round. The other point I would like to raise, I'm not convinced about the 11:30 at night. Now, I don't do any harvesting, so I know nothing. I know nothing about this at all. But 11:30 at night during certain times seems to me rather late. I would like reassurance, please. Has that really been properly researched and has it really been looked into? Is 11:30 at night reasonable? I don't know, and I'd like to hear from the planners or the applicants. I don't mind who.
Mrs. Geary, would you like to come back on?
Yes, I mean the hours in terms of the harvest time, they apparently have to sort of work as hard as possible, as long as possible, to make sure the fruit is processed correctly. So that's specifically 2 months where they do work very, very late past midnight. And the premises licenses doesn't allow them to go beyond 11. I think what happens is sometimes the customers take some time to leave, which is why there's a little bit of contingency at 11:30 fail safe to allow people to actually sort of finish their event and make their way to the car park. I think some of the health and safety issues mentioned is where there's not been enough leeway in the timing of the lights between the end of the event and the car park not being lit anymore. So that has, yes, they have indicated that the health and safety justification for those hours.
Mr. Jarman?
Obviously, I'm happy. I'm not so sure about the customer side, but I will be told. Thank you very much.
Yeah, sorry to keep coming back on this point, but it was a contextual point. Obviously, my job is to advise you of the rules, and the rules that you have chosen, to go over it again, is no biodiversity net gain for commercial, which this obviously is, only residential. So it's very difficult when you have, you know, worst case scenario, dare I say it, at an appeal, where an inspector will just say, this is a commercial development and you've got no policy for biodiversity net gain. And secondly, I'm not arguing against the merits of this, but one of the points about conditions and just planning generally is proportionality. At the end of the day, we're talking about bollard lighting. We're not talking about floodlights. And as could be seen in one of the earlier pictures, it's a big car park and people have their lights on at night. So it's all a matter of balance to me. So all I'm asking is just to give it very careful consideration given the context I've outlined. Thank you.
I think Councillor English, myself and others were giving it serious consideration, and there are grounds for mitigation of views and landscaping issues in general, regardless of the biodiversity. And frankly, it's easy enough for them to accommodate. It's not asking an unreasonable. It's not as if it's going to in any way cramp their development or even cost much money.
Apologies, I will shut up after this, but I'm very conscious that there's no external scrutiny at the moment. And dare I say it, if certain conditions are put on, and we're not careful with the wording, the expectation will be we're going to enforce them. Yeah. And then if we're ever in this, and this applies to every single application, it will be a different world at appeal.
Thank you, Mr. Jarman. Councillor Reardon.
Thank you, Chairman. Could you hold it on that screenshot? Just a bit of advice, and I'm sure councillors are probably aware of this, but immediately to the side of the pond is very dense woodland, which is run by the applicant's business. It's well worth a visit there during the summer, bluebell lined woods, etc. So that area tends to be very shielded from a further distance. Unfortunately, we haven't got that at the current frame. So really, by saying that, I'm reinforcing what the advice that Mr. Jarman has given us. Oh, there we go. There's a better shot. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, and Councillor Perry, and then we'll go to the vote.
Yeah, I just want to make one comment because I don't have a problem with what's pretty well being said, but the word harsh was used, and that does not slightly annoy me, actually. Sorry, I know this site very, very well, and anybody calls this site harsh, I think, with all due respect, they need to have a close look at it, because in fact, what they've done is plant a vineyard very, very close. They didn't need to plant that vineyard. They did it for aesthetic point of view, really, more than anything else. And to say that that is harsh is a little strong. And I think you need. This is a very beautiful site, actually. And if it was, and And I actually happen to like rolling vineyards. I realise they don't have trees and other shrubs. If you go to Champagne, you go to Burgundy, you go to Bordeaux, you will not see trees or anything all over the place. That is not what vineyards are about, but they are beautiful in their own way. And what they've done here is a very beautiful site in the heart of the Weald of Kent. And with all due respect, it's not harsh. I just wanted to make that statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Councillor English, and then we must.
We are making intensely hard work of something which is not rocket science. It is not unreasonable, given that there will still remain a considerable amount of lighting on the site, and there is some landscape impact to have a degree of landscaping in this pond. It is entirely proportionate. I have considered it. I think it's a reasonable condition. I think the application should proceed with that condition, and I really don't see that it's inconveniencing anyone or that it's disproportionate or unreasonable.
Thank you, Councillor English. But
I say I'm not objecting to the condition at all. No.
Right. Okay, Councillor Perry and Councillor Reardon, you proposed and seconded. Is that in accordance with the order papers, together with delegated authority to the officers to negotiate and to produce a landscaping condition? Are you happy with that? So on that basis, members, can I please have votes in favour? Votes against? Abstentions? That is carried. Thank you very much. Interesting debate, members. Thank you very much. Right, we now come to item 19 on the old agenda, on item 9 on the new agenda for Len House, Mill Street. And I'll call upon Marion Geary to give us her report.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just go through the presentation first because it's quite a complicated series of amendments to this scheme that members of the Planning Committee permitted 3 years ago now. So this is the site plan. I think everybody should be familiar with Len House on Palace Avenue, Mill Street, in the centre of Maidstone. These are artist impressions of how the interior of the main wing on the Palace Avenue side will look after the amendments. Effectively, we have an internal street along the Palace Avenue facade, and which will go around the corner into so it'll basically L-shaped wrap around the retail units that are envisaged. More artist impressions of how the interior will be fitted out. Basically, the bottom of the ramp that currently links the 2 floors, and the top of the ramp here. And this will be sort of an entrance to the main building. The proposal is to subdivide what was going to be an open workshop into 3 retail units. What the applicants are saying is they feel that they're going to be more marketable and more realistic in terms of how that space can be effectively used. So effectively, originally it was going to be 1 single space, and what they want to do is have 4 commercial units indicated, and an internal thoroughfare that will obviously be sort of like, you know, mall type arrangement to access those units. This is the proposed first floor. Originally, they're going to be parking here. And what they're planning to do is remove the parking due to health and safety concerns about fire separation and vehicle close to residential properties, and just refit it out. So apartments here, a communal gym and a communal lounge, and then a sort of open historical assets area. This is a proposed change to the 2nd floor, which previously was roof terraces all the way around. The roof terraces will now be restricted to the Mill Street facade due to technical problems, which are highlighted in the report. And the remainder of that roof will be now made into a sedum green roof. This is the proposed roof plan, which will just have various plant on it and an area of PV panels. These are the original plans. So obviously the ground floor was much more open before. This was the approval with terraces all the way around. This is the original second floor. And that was the original roof plan. So in terms of the changes, basically the ground floor is going to be, instead of one single space, subdivided into more commercial units. The service corridor is reduced in length, which allows the bottom of the ramp to be visually exposed to the public thoroughfare. Originally, there was going to be a boardwalk along the River Len. That's now been deleted for technical reasons and viability reasons. But the sort of public can still appreciate the building internally within this internal street. And this has been opened out, and this area is going to be fully glazed for visibility of the ramp. The consequence of this is a slight net reduction in commercial floor space compared to the approval. At first floor level, as I said, they're deleting the parking and replacing that externally outside the site on the southwestern corner of the building. The floor space has just been reconfigured to create these communal areas that obviously are net gained from the planning permission, the gym and the lounge. In terms of the second floor, the number of external terraces has been reduced, and this is to do with problems meeting building regulations in terms of the height differences between the outside and the internal floor of the new apartments. Effectively, you can't get a staircase out from the apartments to the roof terrace the way it was originally envisaged. And the sedum roof on the upper floor is no longer feasible due to weight issues overall, and they're replacing that with the sedum around this edge here, which can support that structure. So in addition to these sort of fairly fundamental changes, there's some consequential minor alterations to repairs to some of the buildings, because the reinforced steel structure is obviously quite old and needs to make sure it's not corroded. So there needs to be some investigation work and potential repair to that. Some minor changes to doors and windows are consequential from these amendments. Slight relocation of cycle stores, and overall the conditions have to be updated, because what's been happening over the last 3 years is some of the conditions have been partly discharged for the conversion, so they are basically already approved, so no need to approve those again. And there'll be some heritage interpretation areas specifically in this area here, which is the lobby to the commercial areas, and at the top of the ramp here. So obviously that's very important for a listed building, that when it changes its use in this way, that the public visiting can still have some appreciation of its industrial past, and it isn't sort of sanitized or domesticated too much. So those are benefits that have been secured. Obviously, there's been several urgent updates to this scheme. The urgent update last week basically amended the culvert obligations timeline to be more reasonable in terms of the timescales for the applicants to sort of meet those obligations. And we have some clarity of the heads of terms in regarding of the parking and the open space that should be provided for these residents, in terms of that being on the adjoining site. And just as a technicality, we wish to revoke the current unilateral undertaking on the culvert, so there's clarity that the new obligations will be the one that apply. Just to slightly update some issues, the internal street that was ahead of term, we've reconsidered that and think actually it would be appropriate to have a planning condition for that aspect, secure that the daytime business use the internal street for the public, so that it's not to the public can benefit from seeing inside the building, even if they're not necessarily the customers, and you get some pedestrian permeability. across the building. And there's just some technical corrections and rewording of some of the conditions. Just to update further, some consultees have responded. Southern Water Services and the Environment Agency have both reiterated their previous comments. KCC Drainage Authority have commented that the flood risk assessment is now slightly out of date. It dates from April 2020, and they would wish to see that updated. And what my suggestion is that be incorporated into the drainage condition so that the revised drainage strategy is in conjunction with an updated flood risk assessment. So the two issues are tied together, and we're can be confident that all the water can be accommodated on site without any problems to surrounding areas in terms of flooding. Just to clarify that the standard the heads of terms may need to be sort of slightly adjusted on negotiations, so we wish to have that authority delegated to the head of planning in the normal way. So overall, the changes are recommended for approval with the heads of terms in the additional urgent update, with the internal street head of term becoming a condition, and the amended drainage condition to have an updated flood risk assessment. So overall, the application is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Marion. We have one public speaker, Mr. Obi, for the applicants. As you're speaking on both applications, the Planning Commission and the listed body, you have 6 minutes. And if you touch the middle button, your microphone will turn red, and you have 6 minutes from when you go. Okay.
Thank you. So my name's Thomas Obi. I'm here to talk on behalf of Len House. So my brother and I purchased the Roots building back in 2019, and since then we have invested a significant amount of time and funding to protect Len House. We're keen to provide Maidstone with a project that will be the jewel of the town centre, providing much needed homes and jobs, and we hope that our investment will be the catalyst to further regeneration of the Maidstone town centre. Planning permission has already been granted at Len House, and this is in the process of being constructed. This application will ensure that work can continue at Len House to bring forward this vital town centre development, which is allocated in the draft local plan, shortly to be adopted, for the delivery of 159 dwellings in accordance with the consent. The alterations proposed have been developed alongside Maidstone Borough Council, English Heritage, and our team of specialists to ensure this historic building design of importance of this building is retained while it is commercially functional and viable. The world we operate in is very different from when the consent was granted back in 2020. COVID has changed the way we live, shop, and socialise. However, we are also in very different economical times, but despite the challenges of rising costs with the development, as areas of the building have been exposed that clearly require more work, we are committed to continue our investment to complete the proposed scheme. We are grateful for the planning officers for their positive recommendation, and if the members of this committee endorse this and vote to grant permission, then it will allow us to proceed towards ensuring that Len House, this vital building in the heart of the town, can be fully restored and appreciated for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you press the button, and thank you very much. Thank you. Right, we have our local member, Councillor English, then Councillor Harwood, wishes to speak.
I understand the change in economic circumstances and the difficulties that sometimes emerge when you deal with historic buildings and the importance of getting this project. I was somewhat dismayed when I read the original officer's report, because I thought we were in danger of losing some of the most valuable elements of the scheme, which actually add considerable value in the long term, I think, to the scheme and also to the town centre. I'd like to congratulate the officers on retrieving, planning officers, for retrieving that situation along with, I think, with the applicant, and for giving us with what's on the papers tonight with the urgent update, something that can hopefully meet the aspirations both of the applicant and of the council and the public of Maidstone. So on that basis, with all the urgent updates, I'm happy to support the application and therefore move it.
Thank you, Councillor English. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Chairman, and I'll second with the urgent update. And again, I would just like to thank the planning officers for their work on this and for holding the line. I think this is a really important application for urban Maidstone and for the town centre and in its regeneration. And in relation to that, I think as the report states, this committee was always a little queasy about the walkway proposal, which I think looked impractical and potentially could have harmful impacts on the mill pond. So I think actually it's improved the scheme, but its removal, because I think that cantilever always looked artificial and detracted from the Palace Avenue aspect of Len House. In terms of the detail, a couple of things. One, on the deculverting or daylighting of the River Len along the site frontage, which will mostly be close to the new build. I think a key part of its aesthetic impact will be basically putting the river back in front of it. And in the middle of Canterbury, they wouldn't deck over the Stour. They celebrate the river, and I think we need to do that. And I think, as the officers have also noted, it's a key part of the surface water mitigation strategy as well. I have actually spoken very recently with the Environment Agency, and the Environment Agency have ideas about an overall improvement for that whole stretch of the River Len and are champing at the bit to get on with it. So I wonder if we should have an informative that contact should be made forthwith with South East Rivers Trust and the Environment Agency to actually start talking turkey on daylighting the River Len. The other issue is that we have got a reduction in the area of sedum roof proposed, and I'm very aware that as part of Max Tant's work on the surface water flooding and for flood risk management, that roof was part of the solution for surface water, and I think so therefore the KCC reference to reappraising the surface water plan, I think, is probably appropriate, but there is an opportunity from the reduction in sedum roof in that potentially the area of solar PV could be increased. So I just wonder whether it is worth discussing whether additional solar PV could be provided on some of the roof space that's freed up, because solar PV is a lot lighter than a green roof. In terms of almost the balancing for that, I am aware of why the officers are pushing from a kind of a historic structure perspective, the open void areas for the proposed gym and this communal open area. But I have to say, I see them as the next amendment, because I really do wonder whether it is viable or worthwhile to consider this large, basically kind of just a waste of space within a building. And I would like the officers' views on whether there is potentially a way to enable some more accommodation, or to get a use which is likely to stack up, because I do have some concerns on that front. And the other thing, which is not strictly a planning matter, so it's probably an informative and is all tied up with the drainage issue, is the problem of misconnections, well, euphemistically known as misconnections with the river, in that there's a lot of drainage infrastructure which discharges directly into the river. The opportunity will be from the daylighting and from the work that's currently going on the daylighting strategy, but it's not good enough for Southern Water to say they're not changing their statutory consultee comments on the original application, because we all know for a fact that they found out that there are some issues with the Southern Water, well, with foul water drainage infrastructure in this area, and it needs sorting out before the whole lot is tarmacked again and disappears for another 100 years. So again, I don't know quite, I think that's probably an informative, but Southern Water need to sit down and talk to the Environment Agency, do some dye tests or whatever it is they do to work out where these misconnections are coming from. Thank you. Sorry, that was a bit long, but there's a lot going on this site.
Mr. Jarman?
I think definitely on the first point and possibly the fourth point, they can be reflected in the heads to the planning obligation. Planning obligations give us that flexibility. On the point about the gym, that's obviously a choice of the applicant, but the original application was very comprehensively worded. So if the applicant wanted more apartments, which is what I think you alluded to, they, excuse my English, wouldn't be able to get away with a series of Section 73 applications. They'd have to put in a new application. And that would mean applying all the new standards we have, particularly with regard to the quality of life for people living there. So, and obviously it's not before us. What is before us is a gym. So, yeah. And then in terms of the green roof, it's actually a sedum roof. I've been on sedum roofs. I don't know if people have been to Trosley Country Park. There's a sedum roof on the toilets there. They're very lightweight because sedum's like a sort of succulent, isn't it? They're not, what's proposed is not a living roof, which some people call a green roof. It is a sedum roof. So being very specific about this, I think I'm not against the PV panels, but I think the PV panels compared to sedum would actually weigh more. But what Marion can correct me, I don't think we received the structural report, but my understanding is that the structure is so weak that it can't support sedum. Is that correct?
Yes, that was the explanation given because of the span that the lightweight frame is dealing with, and the strength of the existing concrete can't be relied upon because of its age. I think that they're of the opinion that the sedum roof just tips the balance into potentially being too much extra weight on that structure. Just to say, we do have a condition 15 on a renewable energy strategy. So effectively, the PV provision could be revisited in that, but I think it needs an informative to direct them into the idea that we expect more solar panels on the roof than had been indicated.
Yeah, I think through you, Chairman, that's all I was seeking, some flexibility, and I think it applies to both in terms of the heads of terms and in terms of, you know, that currently they're talking about a gym and this, whatever it is, this shared open area. But I would prefer that we built in some acceptable wiggle room for a solution which works within that space, because as colleagues are aware, at the Springfield mill redevelopment, we've had just this problem around communal space and and it has taken a very long time of toing and froing to come up with something, and they're still not there, and it's still upsetting people. So I just wanted some flexibility built in. On the sedum issue, it is a green roof of sorts, it is living. The big problem with them is, even though the mats are light, the waterproofing is not, and therefore I agree with the case officer that if we can, build in, whether that's by informative or whatever, that there are some discussions as to whether we can get more renewables in because of this change. We ought to do that, because, as I say, we've still got a lot of enabling development on there. We're not just talking about the listed building. This is a comprehensive development where there's other components of it and other parts of it. But I think otherwise, I'm content as long as we have got the flexibility within the wording.
Thank you, Councillor Harwood. Does anybody else wish to speak on this item? Okay, it has been proposed that we approve the application as per the order papers and the urgent update, and with the informatives suggested by Councillor Harwood relating to the EA and Southern Water.
Sorry, I was proposing that those go in heads.
Oh, okay, fine.
Yeah, I think I'd prefer there was delegated powers for the officers to look into those heads changes to make sure this really stacks up, because this, and what I'm trying to do is make life easier, not make life more difficult, if you know what I mean.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. So is everybody happy with that? They understand? Oh, Marion, yeah.
And just as I sort of said in my verbal update, one of the heads of terms to become a condition. It's the internal street to be amended to a condition, to wording delegated to head of development management, and amended the drainage condition to refer to this updated flood risk assessment as well, plus what's in the urgent update in the written versions. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, is that clear to everybody? Okay, so votes in favour, please. Votes against? Abstentions? One abstention. Okay, members, thank you very much. That is carried. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming along this evening. We've just been gone. But he spoke on both applications.
Yeah, he did.
So we have approved both. We need to take a separate vote on it. Okay. I've just been told we need to take a separate vote on the listed building application. Right, so votes in favour. Votes in favour. Thank you, members. Votes against. Thank you, members. Well, one can get carried away, can't one? Right, there we go. Oh, no. Right, thank you, members. Thank you for your patience, understanding and forbearance. Right, we now rush on to the appeals, which is I'll ask Mr. Jarman if he wants to say anything about them.
Just very quickly on the whole, really good. I thought it was a good discussion last Thursday on the floodlights at the Marden Cricket and Hockey Club, and item number 3 on the appeals list is the allowed appeal. But as councillors pointed out, that was very different to what was before them on Thursday evening. What was before them on Thursday evening was a lot more, as Councillor Gooch would say, harsh. I'm particularly pleased on appeal item number 4, and I'm sure Councillor Manford, if he was here tonight, would be very pleased, because I think the officer, to eat humble pie, the officer recommendation was for permission for this. And I think, with the benefit of hindsight, we as officers concentrated too much on the appearance of the countryside. But we said, you know, if you have a residential garden in terms of its character, is a whole lot different to a farmer's field. Because you get the paraphernalia, which doesn't require planning permission most of the time, you know, washing lines, I don't know, hot tubs, whatever you do in your back garden. And the councillor agreed with it. That's right, the inspector agreed with us. So good old SP17 again. So that made my day. Thank you.
I'd say I was disappointed.
Thank you, Mr. Jarman. SP17 rules, doesn't it? Yes, absolutely. Does anybody any comments they want to make on the appeals? Okay, thank you, members. In that case, thank you for a good meeting. Yes, I won't put that to the vote, Councillor Cooper. In that case, I declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much. Thank you to the officers for their usual wonderful support. Thank you.